Welcome, everyone. While my fellow colleagues are taking their seats, I would like to give some opening remarks. First and foremost, thank you so much for taking your time to attend this session. It is my utmost pleasure and true delight to welcome you and facilitate the discussion around science and technology diplomacy across Europe and Asia, and introduce you briefly to the initiative that gathers this outstanding panel of 6 country informants, myself, and an even wider group of very committed and talented and knowledgeable young professionals who are interested in science, technology, innovation, and the future of the societal impact of these domains. May I ask for the projection of the slides, please? Okay. There seems to be a disconnect between the front slide and the one that I see in front of me. Okay. Yes, now it's in sync. Yeah, just a quick reminder. So the title of this session is Bridging Continents and Advancing Science, the Future of Asia-Europe Science Diplomacy. And what I would like to particularly highlight before I go into some technical introduction is that this panel gathers a balanced representation from Europe and Asia. So even if geographically today we are meeting here in Europe, we have a substantial presence of perspectives from Asia gathered in this outstanding panel. We are all gathered together by Asia-Europe Foundation, known by the abbreviation of ASEF. To those who are less familiar with this institution, I would like to say a few words. The Asia-Europe Foundation is an intergovernmental and not-for-profit organization based in Singapore. As the only permanent institution of the Asia-Europe meeting, or ASEM, it has been working since 1997 to bring together governments and civil society members across Asia and Europe, spanning 51 countries, the European Union, and the Secretariat of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, with a mission to facilitate regional knowledge exchange and peer-to-peer collaboration. ASEF works to enhance dialogue, enable exchanges, and encourage collaboration across the thematic areas of culture, education, governance, sustainable development, public health, and media. Today, the project which we are bringing you falls under the thematic area of education, where Asia-Europe Foundation works to connect youth, students, teachers, educators, higher education leaders, policymakers to contribute to innovation in the formal and non-formal education sector and towards the Sustainable Development Goals and the United Nations Agenda 2030. And a couple of words on the exact initiative, which is only one of the projects under the guidance and steering of Asia-Europe Foundation. So the Asia-Europe Science and Technology Initiative is a new project of Asia-Europe Foundation's Education Department. As of this year, this initiative conducts research and connects academics, diplomats, professionals, and students engaged in international collaborations related to science, technology, and innovation in Asia and Europe. The objectives with this new project are, firstly, to facilitate knowledge exchange between different actors in the field. Secondly, to contribute to further understanding of science and technology diplomacy. And thirdly, to build peer-to-peer networks among future leaders. and all of which helps to contribute to the overarching objective of Asia-Europe Foundation of enabling dialogue and promoting Asia-Europe cooperation. And to briefly introduce you to the forthcoming Asia-Europe Science and Technology Diplomacy Report. It is guided by the following two research questions. What strategies do countries in Asia and Europe have for science diplomacy? And second one, what actions and tools are being used to implement these strategies? And to concisely introduce you to the methodology, we were guided by the questionnaire for the compiling of the country report addressed in the following items. First element, national science and technology diplomacy strategies and their coordination mechanism. Second, actions and tools to implement the strategies. Third element, science and technology diplomacy personnel in all its diversity and variety. And fourth, the future outlook of our respective countries. Country informants conducted interviews with stakeholders in the field to validate and complement desk research. And all this analytical work resulted in individual country reports and data to be used for comparative analysis. Overall, more than 40 country informants out of altogether 53 Asia-Europe Foundation members were included in the research project. Though not covering all Asia-Europe Foundation member countries, the results will be able to provide an overview of the priorities in different countries and regions in Asia and Europe in the field of science diplomacy and identify common areas and themes. And this analytical work aims to provide insights and recommendations to the relevant institutions on areas for enhanced collaboration within and across both regions. And in the long term, the expected impact of the Asia-Europe Science and Technology Diplomacy Report is to promote connectivity and collaboration between Asian and European stakeholders in science, technology, and diplomacy, and empower regional stakeholders. Firstly, through fostering interdisciplinary and international research around science and diplomacy. Secondly, identifying national and regional science diplomacy initiatives. And thirdly, indicating potential areas of inter-regional cooperation in science diplomacy. And last but not least, promoting intergovernmental cooperation through national and regional collaboration and research on science diplomacy initiatives. And now to give you a more nuanced insight into country-specific perspectives, I would like to invite Olivia to take the floor and present her major findings on France.
Good morning, everyone. I'll just give it a second for the slides to follow. Yes. Okay, first things first. So my name is Olivia. I'm French, and I am a researcher. So my full-time job is to evaluate public policies and programs to improve their impact, essentially. So today I'm going to speak about the French strategy, and I wanted to acknowledge one of the key contributors to my study, who is in the room today, which is expert Pierre Bruno Ruffini. But this research has covered extensive desk research, interviews with the foreign ministry in France, and also practitioners who were part of the network of France abroad. So, you know, the French have been fairly reactive when it comes to their science diplomacy strategy. As you know, the big conference from 2010 that defined science diplomacy for the first time happened then. France took about 2 years to react to that and have an official position. And this is the foreign ministry that laid out that official position and led on it. So now, of course, it's 11 years later. We've had many more presidents and different governments in France. So the framework is becoming quite out of date, and it's widely acknowledged that it needs to be revised. But that doesn't prevent France from having an extremely active science diplomacy, and we'll come to this in a second. There should be a new strategy coming soon. The Foreign Ministry told me that it could come as soon as next year. What they were focusing on in the past few years in France was to get the basics in place in terms of reforming the national research system and the national higher education system. They wanted that first, and they did huge reforms in the last few years about that before they wanted to tackle science diplomacy. So quickly on the priority areas. So France is extremely interested in becoming a leader on climate resilience, but also biodiversity. So that's a huge priority of the French strategy. And obviously we've seen France in action at the COP21, and France has research institutions focused on this topic of climate resilience. Medical and health sciences. France is quite keen to address health disparities and be a key player in, responding to health crises, like, for instance, the one we had on COVID-19. France also wants to lead on AI and innovative technology solutions. So that's a big area of focus for France, trying to attract talents in that domain. And finally, I think a very interesting and different aspect to France's science diplomacy is the focus on social sciences. I think it's quite unique in the sense that France has joined units of research abroad dedicated to social sciences. And that's something I haven't seen as strongly in other similar countries. Okay, so now I wanted to talk about the objectives of France when it comes to its science diplomacy. But the way I wanted to do that is I wanted to map roughly, it's not perfect, obviously, but I wanted to map roughly those objectives against those three areas that we all know of science diplomacy. And when we look at France's strategy broadly, it very, very, very much fits the bill when it comes to using science for diplomacy and using diplomacy for science. But we'll come to it. Science in diplomacy is probably the area that is acknowledged, and France is intentional about it, but is not maybe as strong. So if we start with using science for diplomacy, France is very much doing that. And the way it does that is that it's using science to increase its economic competitiveness. So for instance, as mentioned, on climate change and innovative digital technology, France really wants to attract the top talents in those fields and become a leader in those fields. And so what that means is, a variety of initiatives really dedicated to attraction of researchers, students, innovators, so also entrepreneurs. France spends a lot of energy and resources in trying to attract the top talent. But France also uses science to maintain its soft diplomacy. So for instance, France uses science in its former areas of influence, in Francophone Africa, in Southeast Asia, to really sustain ties with countries that have already ties with France. And so the way it does that is, with research institutes, identifying and working with excellence and talents in those countries. So you probably know about the Pasteur Institute. They have a lot of local antennas working with the talents in those countries. But also France has a dedicated digital platform to maintain ties with its, alumni, like foreign students who've studied in France before. And then finally, France is very keen to use science to genuinely tackle global challenges and have a common response to those global challenges, climate change, public health, sustainable development. France is really keen to use science to collaborate. When we turn to diplomacy for science now, obviously France is very, very strongly engaged in that. And so the whole lot of funding and attention of French efforts is very much channeled to facilitate research cooperation. And the way France does that is through multilateral forums, of course. So the EU, France is incredibly active in the EU, in Horizon, the Horizon program, UNESCO, but also very much on a bilateral basis. So for instance, France has 15 to 20 countries that has been selected, with whom it really has very thorough meetings regularly to establish the cooperation roadmaps with those countries. And once those roadmaps are in place between France and, say, India, for instance, then France will make sure that projects are funded, projects are supported, and really that the bilateral cooperation is strong. And then finally on science in diplomacy. So this is an interesting one. I think probably the French scientific culture is the most fragmented that arguably among other, let's say, leaders, scientific leaders. And what that means is that it's really hard for France to have a good consensual dialogue between scientists and decision makers. And that means it's difficult to use science to inform diplomacy, because there is such a disconnect between scientists themselves. It's really hard to have a unified scientific voice that can be heard by policymakers. It's already hard as it is to be heard by policymakers and understood by policymakers. So can you imagine if the scientific landscape is fragmented, which is the case in France? So yeah, but that said, France is very much using social sciences in its diplomacy, because most diplomats are trained in social sciences, they understand it, they know how to use it, so they very much rely on social sciences to make decisions, inform their strategies and policies. And an interesting objective of France is that they really very much want to strengthen their own research capacity. And to do that, they want to use science diplomacy and internationalize their research institutions. So I thought it was interesting to highlight. So that's what I wanted to say roughly about where France stands against our three components of science diplomacy. Quickly on the geographical priorities, obviously Europe, top priority for France. Obviously France really wants to be a key participant in the European project and making the EU a leader in scientific cooperation and scientific initiatives. France also obviously wants to learn and get inspired and cooperate with other big weights, let's put it like that, in science, so the US, Japan, the UK. And then, that's what I was mentioning earlier, France is interested to keep and maintain its ties with the Global South, and that includes, Francophone Africa, Southeast Asia. And I think one thing that is interesting here is that France really wants to move away from the narrative that it's bringing science to those countries, which was, a narrative that one could have from the past. And they really are intentional now to build a new narrative about working with excellence in the Global South, not bringing science as it could have been described before. So France has a huge amount of tools and actions to implement its science diplomacy. I won't get into details here. I've been given very strict time limits, so I won't be able to get into details. But I just wanted to highlight two of those tools. The first one is the extensive network of science and technology advisors that France has in place across the world. And I want to highlight this because it's really coming out as a strong differentiation point of the French strategy. Compared to its size and resources, France has really, really invested a lot of resources, both human and financial, to have that network in place. And so you have the numbers below. It's over 100 people full-time, like dedicated to science and technology abroad. So doing intelligence, so monitoring developments, but also promoting the French science. And then I just wanted to highlight an interesting other tool, which is the extensive network of research organizations that France has across the world. And I think this is also quite unique that France has that. It means it's quite difficult to coordinate, but it is a huge, huge, huge differentiation point for France, having all those research institutes doing their own cooperation and having their own representative offices in countries across the world. So some of the most famous ones are CNRS, INRA, INSERM, and they are doing their own partnerships directly in countries across the world and have their own research labs. So I just wanted to highlight those two, which for me are very, very unique to France. Okay, I think I'll finish there. So very quickly on strengths and weaknesses. I think already mentioned, France is a very, very strong network, and that's unique compared to its size and resources. Really comprehensive tools, very active participant and initiator of bilateral and multilateral engagements. And I think what's interesting is, and I had a lot of debate on this with some of my key informants, is that France already has a soft power, so you would think that it would help France to promote its science diplomacy. But actually, some of my informants thought it's actually the opposite. So France, because France has already such a strong soft power on things like lifestyle, culture, such a strong cultural brand, it's actually really difficult for science to shine through and to present France to have a clear branding for France as a science actor and a science powerhouse. So that was an interesting weakness, I thought. And then, obviously the flip side of having such an extensive diplomatic network is that it's really hard to coordinate it and bring coherence to it because it's very bottom-up and people coordinate and cooperate in all directions, and it's getting harder to put some structure. And then interesting weaknesses is the fact that France is so highly specialized in its scientific teachings and offers limited, obviously, English courses. And that means France is a bit less attractive to top talents, although it's one of its key objectives and key ambition. And then I'll finish by saying, obviously, the disconnect between scientists and diplomats I already mentioned is really making it hard for France to articulate a coherent science diplomacy that really brings everyone together coherently. I think I'll stop there because I think I'll be killed by my facilitator. Thank you so very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Olivia. We'll continue with the Grand European Ambition, and Maxime will give you a presentation on Belgium.
First of all, good morning to you all. Thanks for coming early in the morning, listening to our country reports. I'm going to present Belgium to you. As you know, quite a complicated country. So basically our report is made out of 4 different reports, the Belgian federal one and then the 3 Belgian regions, of course. As you know, Belgium always have a solution for everything, but we like to create a problem out of it. That's one of our national sports. And I would love to show you the slides, obviously. Excellent.
I'm very sorry for the technical glitch. I guess this is one of the greatest examples of having a solution and then creating a problem to solve it.
We still need to speed up our technical knowledge in Europe.
Yeah. Okay, meanwhile, while the technical issue is being solved, I just wanted to add a couple of words on the sequence of our presentations. As you saw, we have started grand and ambitious with France. Then the initial plan for us is to proceed with the other two European countries, so Belgium and then Hungary, and then proceed with our three-country presentations from Asia. However, if that would be necessary, we'll introduce some minor changes in the initial planning of the outline of the presentations. Okay, so since we can't not to keep you waiting, perhaps, then we can address in a more interactive fashion the first question that guides our panel, and then proceed with the remaining country reports. Yeah, so I would like to start our small conversation with one question that is actually with two parts. I want to start by asking your opinion concerning the crucial driving force for the future Asia-Europe science and technology diplomacy. According to you, do you place high hopes on national or specific institutional strategies, so the institutional approach? Or do you believe that people with their capacities to foster amicable ties with their colleagues across Asia and Europe will fulfill in the future this indispensable role? And if I may, I would prefer to start with the elaborations from France and Japan.
So my name is Kana Asano, and I will introduce myself later, but and respond to the question. So as for the national and specific institutional strategy, so I believe we have, in Japan, we have already discussed a lot. So we have to move to the actionable. So we have to, we are moving to specific action to promote science diplomacy.
Yes, so on that, I think scientists will always collaborate organically, so it will always start bottom up. I think science will always be bottom up. It will always be the meeting of several minds working on a problem and coming together to find a solution. And I think that the role of individuals and the states or regional organizations in that context is that I think states and regions should support, first of all, and structure this bottom-up coordination. It will always be bottom-up, though, and it's essential, right, for good science and good cooperation. So, yeah, instilling more structure, incentive, support, and guidance towards a strategic direction, it comes hand in hand, essentially, is my answer on that.
Thank you so much. And with that great context, I hope we can proceed with our second attempt to continue with the European elaboration with a specific focus on Belgium.
Well, it works. So, you already had the small introduction, so then I can introduce myself very shortly. I'm a civil servant at the Belgian Science Policy Office. I'm basically doing the auditing of different science programs, collaborations and also different processes that are linked into the Belgian federal science policies. Next to that, I'm also the coordinator on SciTech diplomacy at the Brussels Diplomatic Academy, which is a postgraduate school of the Dutch-speaking University of Brussels. I'll start actually with the conclusion of my report, and that is the fact that the federal strategy on science and technology diplomacy is basically created because of the input of businesses and the private sector. So when I will be talking about strategies, I actually mean strategies that are initiated and that are being developed by mainly the private sector and then have been adopted by the public sector, by politics and by government. In general, Belgium is doing quite well on the innovation index, so we are at the higher side. We're basically the fourth or actually third best in Europe, and we also made a big improvement between 2014 and 2021. Very shortly, so as I said, this report is constructed out of 4 different strategies. You have the federal strategy and then the 3 different regions, the Flemish region, the Brussels region and the Walloon region. So Belgium has, of course, a diplomatic corps, which enhances this science and technology diplomacy, but also Flanders is the only region with a full force diplomatic corps. The other regions only have economic representatives which do a bit of the work for the businesses and representing them in the countries and helping them with their scientific needs. We start with the federal level, so the strategies are basically, because it's actually strategies, as I said, it's a lot of different private sector strategies, are coordinated by my own office, by BELSPO, the Belgian Science Policy Office. And this science and technology diplomacy is part of a broader idea of science and heritage strategy, because heritage, of course, is important for Belgium, not only for historical reasons, but also for touristic reasons. And then we try to mix this with science to come to a more broader spectrum of science diplomacy. We are actually waiting for the EU science diplomacy agenda that will be published, as I heard, in the beginning of next year. And out of that, the federal government will create its own full-fledged strategy, so basically unifying the different strategies that are now there on the basis of the EU agenda. On the federal level, we don't have any special science and technology counselors for the national embassies, but we work with special envoys. Mainly, these people are working in the private sector, have some expertise on certain topics, and then they are asked to solve specific issues in specific regions or countries. And we have very specific SciTech collaboration programs with India, China, Vietnam, South Africa, and the Horn of Africa, the last one, of course, more for development cooperation. You see the Belgian diplomatic corps is very widespread. Since Belgium is also a monarchy, this also enhances a bit the fact that we can use our diplomacy, our scientific strength, due to the fact that we also have some royal trade missions, which also enhances this collaboration. On the Flemish level, we have a Flemish diplomatic corps, which has full power, so this is quite unique. It's only actually Canada and Belgium which has that. And Flanders also have their own investment and trade office with specific science and technology counselors based in 9 countries. It's the only region who has this. And next to that, also 70 offices specifically for commercial and economic counseling. As you see, these are the diplomatic representations, so mainly based in Europe, but also in New York and South Africa. And then quite a big network on the science and technology counselors for Flanders Investment and Trade. For the Walloon region, there they have AWEX, the Walloon Export and Foreign Investment Agency. They have no diplomatic corps, so they rely fully on their 93 commercial and economic counselors who do the whole work for all the businesses they represent, and no science and technology counselors. But as you see, they have a lot of offices also very well represented in Asia, so on that aspect they're doing pretty well. Always the case for European countries, we're very little represented in South America actually, so I think we can do a bit more on that. For the Brussels region, also Brussels have their own government, of course, and they have Hub Brussels, the Brussels Agency for Entrepreneurship. Also no diplomatic corps, but a very broad network of commercial and economic counselors, which are also quite widespread. Now we come to the prioritized fields of science and technology in Belgium. The epicenter of the tech industry is in the Flemish region. We have the big chemical companies around the port of Antwerp, like BASF. The pharmaceutical companies, many of them became well known during the COVID crisis. We have a big pharmaceutical industry. Biotech is also important. We have the Flemish Institute for Biotechnology, quite world-renowned for that. And infrastructural, we have, for example, the Oosterweel link, which links the port of Antwerp with the port of Rotterdam and the hinterland behind it. This is for now the biggest infrastructural project in the whole of Europe. It's 6 billion euros only for the initial phase. So also for that, technology diplomacy is important. A bit less important, but important to mention still, is the environmental engineering with the blue cluster and blue hydrogen in the east part of Belgium towards the border of the Netherlands. And we also have some minor influence basically on social sciences with an important SMIT program, which is a program on media, science and innovation technology, which is basically an interdisciplinary study to link the more soft skills in society towards diplomacy and hard tech. And last but not least, IMEC, our world-renowned chip producer in Leuven. As I said, the industry defines the sci-tech diplomacy in Belgium. The impact of the industrial players is high. This also translates in the fact that the strategies in Belgium are basically made for economic development, are made on the demand of these industrial players. So they have quite some power. Argoria is the biggest one in Belgium, is the National Federation for Technology Companies, and they work with different business development clubs, mainly linking Europe with Asia, and that, for example, automotive with the electrification of the automotive industry, but also the other ones you can read are quite important. Next to that, we have the Flemish Network of Enterprises and the Belgian Network of Enterprises. As usual, everything is split in Belgium, so they all have a very big weight on the creation of the science and technology strategies. I will save you actually from this slide. This is the Belgian coordination mechanism. That said, Belgium does coordinate their science and technology diplomacy well, but I would say that it's only thanks to all the players that are there, not really because of the political level. On the political level, it's a bit difficult. They don't have a real overview of what is happening. They don't really have a long-term plan, so it's actually good that this Interministerial Commission on Science Policy is also incorporating all these institutes, all these organizations that really have a know-how how to create a real strategy and how to be ready for the future, because if it would depend on the politicians, I think we would be late for everything. Two more slides on the future outlook. So for the federal government, as said, we have this synergy that's created between science and technology diplomacy and this cultural heritage diplomacy. Important, certainly for youth, is that we move from a STEM approach towards a STEAM approach, where science, technology, and engineering and mathematics is accompanied now by arts and by more these soft skills that are also really important now for well-being, but also that young people, that everyone can use their background, use their interest in enhancing and reinforcing the science and technology strategies. And as said, we will create a strategic guidance paper based on this EU diplomacy agenda that will be published next year. For the Flemish government, for now, no new strategies are established, because the creation of this Science and Technology Counseling Network was the last step in the current strategy. So now they need to mature a bit, they need to prepare themselves a bit for the new global outcome in the upcoming years. So they will try to mature for a few years. In Wallonia and Brussels, no new strategies. And for the EU, important to mention is that the European research area, better known as the European knowledge area, will integrate its force and its strategies with the European higher education area. So, of course, linking the academic institutions with government and making sure that all the inputs and the knowledge is put together will be a very important step for a more global approach, a more European approach on science and technology innovation. So that was it. Thank you very much. I hope it was a bit clear also with the Belgian structure. And I give the floor to my colleague.
Thank you so much, Maxime, for this nuanced presentation. We'll conclude the European presentations with Balint and a presentation on Hungary. Balint, you have our undivided attention.
Thank you very much. It's a really great honor as a Hungarian just to welcome you all here in this beautiful city of Budapest. And it's also a special honor just to see how many of you show interest in the opinion of early career researchers in this very important topic of science diplomacy. And one thing that we already learned today, that even in the age of cloud computing, we sometimes need hard disk just to resolve a few upcoming problems. But in my speech, I would like to deliver a few key messages about the Hungarian innovation ecosystem and how we actually take part in science diplomacy. Yeah, thank you so much. So my name is Balint Szabó, and actually I'm standing here as a future PhD candidate at the Corvinus University of Budapest. And together with my professor, Gábor Perzse, we had the chance to make a short research, conclude a research in science, technology, and innovation diplomacy about Hungary. And today I would like to deliver 3 key messages about our action in science diplomacy, about its strategic priorities, the key stakeholders in the ecosystem, and I would like to mention a few policy tools and funding schemes which are important in this realm. First of all, I would like to call your attention to the strategic framework of Hungarian science, technology, and innovation ecosystem, and I would like to highlight these 2 documents. One is the Research, Development, and Innovation Strategy of Hungary, and the other one is just issued in the last year, is the John von Neumann program. While the first one is a strategy, the other one is an action plan for Hungarian research, development, and innovation. And in these 2 documents, we can find due statements which actually can define and determine how we actually take part in science diplomacy. First of all, we need to take a measure how we work together with our colleagues in the European Union and in the European innovation ecosystem, and we have ambitious goals in this field, while we are also facilitating bilateral and multilateral collaboration with other strategically important countries, for example, from Asia. And the most important thing that these documents emphasize the role of science diplomacy, just to promote the Hungarian innovation on global scale and also foster knowledge exchange and joint projects with other stakeholders. So we can see that the objectives of science diplomacy of Hungary are embedded within a broader innovation framework and in different documents. I would like to also show, just for a short lens, that we have priorities and focus areas in this innovation ecosystem, which actually address global challenges like health, sustainability, and also highlight the importance of digital transformation and security in Europe nowadays. But to talk about the multi-stakeholder ecosystem in the Hungarian science, technology, and innovation ecosystem, as we know, the triple helix and quadruple helix model, collaboration, international collaboration, stands on different actors, also from the economy, from the academia, and also from the state. So through this lens, we can see that there are a few initiatives in which we can take part, and there are also supporting organizations and networks of diplomats who actually foster innovation and research collaborations between member states and also with other countries from the world. And I think it's really important to mention among the stakeholders the Hungary Academy of Science, because you might know that, the World Science Forum held its first meeting in Budapest in 1999, and now we can welcome you here again. And I would like to highlight this because the smaller a country, the more active it must be diplomatically. So if we check the size of Hungary, its geographical stance, and also its economical production globally or within Europe, we see that we need to represent in international organizations, and we need to make our voice heard in the different platforms. For this, actually, we have various schemes in which we can work on. One is the bilateral partnerships, EU membership, and multilateral research, development, innovation, cooperations, and programs. From this, I would like to highlight one thing, that Hungary, even if it's a small country, has a really broad network of science and diplomacy attachés around the world, 8 in Europe and 4 in Asia, and others in the North America and Southern America. And at the end of my presentation, I would like to show you a few funding schemes, how we would like to interact with our peers and with our other institutions inside in Europe and outside with non-EU countries. And let me highlight a few new programs, just like the Spannonia Scholarships Program. Actually, I had the chance last week just to take part in a national coordination meeting of higher education institutions representatives in Debrecen. And there was a speech which was really interesting, because one of the coordinators, international coordinators of the universities, told that without efficient mobility of researchers and faculty, we cannot talk about efficient and successful student mobility, which is really interesting in a sense that how we students and early career researchers really rely on the experience of our teachers, educators, and researchers. And I think these mobility programs have a really important message for us for international cooperation in the future. Thank you very much for your attention. And I would like to give the floor to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a great conclusion of the European part. We opened the Asian chapter with Thailand. Korchapan, may I kindly invite you to take the floor?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for attending our presentation here. And it's my honor to be here as a country informant of Thailand. Okay, may you show the slide, please? Okay. My name is Korchapan. Now I'm a policy officer of the Office of National Higher Education, Science. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, I'm a policy officer. I'm a policy analyst of the National Higher Education, Science, Research, and Innovation Policy Council in Thailand. And now I'm going to present the Thailand special strategies on science and technology diplomacy, which is our country's use two dual strategies based on what we expect from for the outcome. It's including science and technology diplomacy and innovation diplomacy. With this dual strategy, we can have the flexibility and adaptability for Thailand in terms of operate the traditional and public diplomacy. And at the same time, our objective is to bridging between continents. For example, like Asia and Europe, Thailand have a long international relationship and strong relationship with Europe. We are connect in terms of science and technology for and strengthened in the fields of ICT, green energy, environmental technologies with our European partners, and we excelling agriculture, aerospace, and other advanced manufacturing. Through this dual strategy, Thailand positions itself as regional and global partner in science and technology diplomacy. We actively engage in through the platforms such as ASEAN, Europe, and OECD, and beyond that, we adopt the collaborative and decentralized approach, which is furthers our partnerships across government, academia, private sectors that aligning with scientific endeavor with both regional and national interests. So our main objective is, first of all, it could be economic competitiveness to enhance Thailand's and our partner in global market by advancing innovation ecosystem. And also we trying to advance research and development by the capacity building through collaborative research and knowledge sharing initiative. Also promoting sustainability by addressing both regional and global challenges such as climate change, energy securities, and environmental protection. For partnership with Europe, we partnership with many countries, such as here on the slide, we show some strategic program with United Kingdom, Sweden, and Thai-Spanish collaborations. These initiatives focus on both fostering research cooperations and focusing more on clean energies and waste management. For actions and tools to implement science and technology diplomacy strategy, we are good at bilateral and multilateral partnerships. With Asia, we collaborate with China, STI program, and a lot more programs with Japan. And also with ASEAN, we have the ASEAN's, it's called ASEAN COSTI, which is focusing on talent mobilities and try to tackle challenge in our regional. And other actions and tools such as public diplomacy, for Thailand, we are relying so much on the public diplomacy by each of our scientific organization and agency have partnered themselves with the foreign organization with the same expertise. So for example, like the space explorations, we have our National Astronomical Agency who have partnership with many countries in Europe, such as Italy, and also in Asia, in astronomy and the space science to advancing global scientific knowledge. We also have an innovation-driven development assistance program, just like the program that provides scholarship for over 1,000 international participants a year, that promoting both sustainable development goals and regional goodwill. We have a good bilateral programs between, for example, like Thailand and Swedish partnership to fostering human capital development and sustainable practice. And we are working hard to participate with the global platforms such as OECD, UNESCO, and also we have the notable programs, notable schemes is called PMUB Global Partnership Scheme, which we funding international projects in healthcare, green technology, and fostering cross-border talent mobilities between the young researcher and expertise. Yeah, and for the science and technology diplomacy personnel, we have only 3 attaché who deploys in Beijing office, Brussels, and Washington DC science embassy, which is these attachés playing a good role as in terms of like traditional diplomacy. And they engage with the research institution, negotiate bilateral agreements, and help support our public agencies in terms of like connect with, coordinate the joint projects with each program. And we also, we have, although we don't have like the specific science and diplomacy policies or strategies, we still operate by our public agencies, as I mentioned, and because we try to ensuring that Thailand's active participants an active participants in global scientific networks. Other than that, we have the comprehensive training programs that's led by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Science and Technology Innovations Office, and other diplomatic academies in our countries to keep personal updates on the global trends, especially in the topic in emerging topic in science and technology. Okay. Now, for the future outlook, we try to be more focused on the strategic areas, such as frontiers on the space and explorations, other emerging technologies such as synthetic biologies, which is we recently have the forums in Thailand in this month. And we also built we want to build the futures ready workforce, especially in terms of for help developing the next generations of scientists to address domestic and global challenges. And we, as far as I consult with our senior decision makers, we want to provide an initiative for more centralized science diplomacy units in Thailand, which is quite a good idea because we lack of this centralized body. I do believe that this centralized bodies gonna help to strengthen more diplomacies and focus more on science and technology. And we also we are thinking about establishing comprehensive science diplomacy data center, which is it's gonna help inform decision making and strengthen Thailand institution responsiveness to the global advancements. And also for our other dual approach in innovation diplomacy, it's based on the neoliberal constitutionalism frameworks, but we are actively adopt these schemes, these strategies to help us fostering and connecting with SME startup between Thai startup and European startup for my report, I found some strength and weakness of Thailand. For the strength of Thailand, first of all, we have a strategic location that influence through ASEAN, BIMSTECs, and IMTGTs. It's a cross-border platforms between Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. We have a decentralized diplomatic frameworks, which helps us more focus on the specialization, empowerment of our academics, governmental agencies, and private institutions to engage in international collaborations autonomy. Also, we focus on emerging technology, such as AI, robotics, green technologies, and biotechnologies. And we have a strong commitment in STEMs and human capital development. We have a strong policy alignment with global agendas and actively participates in international forums, as I mentioned. For the weakness, we may have limited long-term impact assessments, which is going to be quite useful if we have a sufficient mechanism to measure the sustain successful of STI initiative. And we still have the coordination gap that aligning between traditional diplomacies and public diplomacy dynamics. And we have a financial constraint, which is limited our budget allocation to scaling up STI diplomacy institutions and initiative. The other than that, we may have a quite underdeveloped domestic STI ecosystem, but now we actively drive it for, and we have some regional competitive challenges that to competing with the stronger STI players in Asia, such as Singapore and China. But actually, now we have a good collaborations and good relationship with them. We depend strongly on traditional sector, which is another weakness. For the opportunity for the improvement, we thinking about enhancing impact monitoring by developing robust frameworks for evaluating the long-term outcome of STI initiatives. And we need to strengthen our financial resources by attracting foreign direct investments in high-tech industries, such as semiconductor sector. We need to boost our coordination by fostering stronger linkages between diplomatic missions and domestic agency and private sector together. We gonna promote regional leadership and address some talented retentions in our countries and our partners by investing in the programs and incentives to retain and attract scientific talents. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your truly detailed presentation. We'll continue with Vietnam, and I invite the Chief to take the floor.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Chi. I'm currently the technology policy researcher at the Institute for Policy Study and Media Development in Vietnam. And as I'm going to represent Vietnam today, I'm going to start with a brief introduction of my country. So Vietnam is a Southeast Asian country and a member state of ASEAN. And similar to many other, Vietnam is deeply influenced by the shifting dynamic of geopolitics, both within the regions and also international context, especially with the effects of the rising China and US tensions within the Indo-Pacific regions. The fourth industrial revolution is also reshaping international politics, representing Vietnam with both new opportunities and challenges. For instance, the rise of automations also pose a threat to the Vietnam economic competitiveness because Vietnam economic competitiveness used to based on cheap labor, and advancement in AI, quantum computer, and blockchains are giving the rise to non-traditional security threats, which might reshape how states, including Vietnam, collaborate and respond to these evolving risks. Given this context, it is crucial for Vietnam to adopt a new proactive and strategic approach to both foreign policy and long-term development plan, with a focus on international collaborations to adapt to the new changing world. Vietnam development strategy, therefore, have a huge shift from basing on passive resources such as natural resources to a more sustainable and long-term development, leveraging the advantages of the new science and technologies to realize the development goal. With this objective in mind, Vietnam developed a new economic model for the current 10-year period from 2021 to 2030, where the very first perspective of this is to, I quote, to establish a rapid and sustainable development based on science, technology, innovations, and digital transformations. This perspective highlights multiple in very crucial documents, including the Socio-Economic Development Plan for 2021 to 2030 and the National Master Plan for the same period. This development orientations is currently shaping many various national strategies, including the dominant STI strategy by 2030 that I highlighted here, and other relevant strategies. When implementations reach down to different agencies at different levels, this is where the STI diplomacy get involved, even when Vietnam don't have a specific STI diplomacy strategy. More detail on Vietnam STI development. Vietnam currently adopts a business-centric approach to STI, which means that STI-focused business are placed at the center of the strategy, and other stakeholders, including government and university, are surrounding and supporting them. This approach reflects specifically in the area of STI diplomacy. In the short term, Vietnam focuses its direct investment in science, technology, and innovations toward the core industry that is essential for supporting business. It implies that of the three pillars, science, technologies, and innovations, the latter two are going to be receive more emphasis due to its practical and immediate applications. The rationale behind this approach is very straightforward. With the rapid pace of technological advancement and the limited resource of Vietnam, we cannot use our resource for every aspect of science, technologies, and innovations. And Vietnam needs to seize opportunity quickly in order to increase the national power and visibility in the new era. In terms of STI diplomacy, Vietnam prioritizes partnership with countries that have developed science and technology capacity, such as the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Union. For example, in 2023, Vietnam and United States become the comprehensive strategic partner, and STI is placed at the center of this partnership. This could allow Vietnam to utilize the so-called lead mover advantages by learning STI experience from leading states and their success and failure case study. Also, Vietnam has very strong focused collaborations within ASEAN to assess, to adopt, and to develop technologies that address national and also regional pressing challenges, including climate change and the rise of sea level. The niche diplomacy of Vietnam and could be seen as like other states in the regions, including Thailand, Philippines, and also previously Singapore. So how Vietnam implemented STI diplomacy at different levels. So just please ignore the very confusing math and a lot of narrow in this slide. The key takeaway of it is that in order to ensuring effective STI diplomacy, Vietnam implement a very complex cross-level and cross-ministry and cross-domain collaborations. These efforts taken up both vertically and horizontally, thus reflecting collaborations across domain-specific professional fields with the three ministries at the core is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Science and Technology, and the Ministry of Information and Communications. These efforts result in diplomacy at different levels, at the very traditional nation-state level with bilateral and multilateral diplomacy to the very local level, the city-to-city diplomacy, including the Ho Chi Minh City and the San Francisco diplomacy. And it can be go deeper into collaboration between corporations among countries. For example, the leading technologies of company in Vietnam like FPT and Viettel have collaborated with NVIDIA for a better operations in STI. Next, on the similarity and differences among ASEAN member states. Similarities in STI diplomacy approach might be observed very clearly in ASEAN member states that the most important factors is the very focus and emphasis on the STI diplomacy. Most Asian member states have either have a standalone diplomacy in STI or they have embedded into different crucial national strategy. Enhancing economic competitiveness is also the most important objective of STI diplomacy sharing across ASEAN member states. Mechanisms and implementations in STI diplomacy might be different and diverse, but in terms of representative approach, all ASEAN member states deploy STI counselor in diplomatic missions to strengthen its collaborations with others in terms of STI advancement. Difference in STI diplomacy among ASEAN member states is absolutely diplomatic priorities and strategic focus. This due to the intricate differences and diversity in economic, social, and cultural aspects among ASEAN member states, along with each nation's strengths and weaknesses. Intricate differences and priorities lead to diversity in strategic focus when it comes to STI diplomacy. Great power in STI of the regions. For example, Singapore focus on a more inclusive approach to STI with its strong R&D capacity, while the middle power like Vietnam and Thailand focus more in a niche diplomacy when it comes to STI by identifying key industry for applications-based investment to boost the national capacity before it's reinvest into the fundamental science and technology. Coming to my last slide. Given the fast changing and the complexity nature of the global STI development, there are quite a lot of chances and opportunities for the young to get involved. But I just list here three of them based on my experience in Vietnam. The first one is become the powerful force for closing the knowledge gap, especially between the public and private sector. This effort happened both domestically and internationally. The fact that the youth are young and could capture the nature of technology and science very quickly bring a lot valuable insight into the table, helping the policymaker in Vietnam to understand the complexity and intricate of STI and to reflect it into the upcoming policy and law. The unit also build global networking and drive innovations. By leading international partnership in STI, for example, currently in Vietnam, there's a lot of diplomatic efforts to have Vietnam to take advantage of the fourth industrial revolutions. One of the examples that I can provide here is the collaborations between my institute, the Institute for Policy Study and Media Development, with the United Nations development programs on assessing AI readiness in Vietnam based on different factors. For example, data maturity, infrastructure, skill, and regulatory landscape. The members get involved into the project quite young in their 20s, and they did a good job in providing Vietnamese government on international experience and lessons. Also with approach and to have effective AI adoptions within the public sector, especially when it comes to the AI adoptions within the Vietnamese public sector. So here's going to be the end of my slide. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Chi. And we will conclude the country presentations with Japan. Kana?
So good morning, everybody. So my name is Kana Asano from Japan. And first of all, it is my great pleasure to be here. And I appreciate ASEF team to make such a meaningful side event happen. So I have been working for a funding agency called JST and the Ministry of Science and Technology in Japan. And I have been dealing with science and technology diplomacy for a long time in various capacities, including as a funding program officer, chief staff for science advisor to foreign minister, and so on. And currently, I'm belonging to think tank division of JST and are in charge of research and analysis of science technology diplomacy, and also I am a chief of staff of science and technology advisor to the Prime Minister of Japan. And today I will talk on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Ryotaro Takano, who is country informant of this project of Japan. So let me start with the perspective of science in diplomacy in Japan. So after Great East earthquake and Fukushima nuclear power plant accident in Japan in 2011, the discussion to the needs of science advisor had started. So at that time, to tackle with such a serious situation, the science advisor in UK and US had played a major role with government decision making. So in Japan, we thought that we need such systems as well. So as a result of intensive discussion, foreign minister at that time appointed the first science and technology advisor to him in 2015. So the first advisor was Professor Kishi, a senior materials scientist, and he had actively promoted science diplomacy shown here, including science advice to the Minister of Foreign Affairs on the occasion of important diplomatic events such as G7, G20, and STI for SDGs United Nations. And in 2020, the government of Japan decided again, and it appointed Dr. Hashimoto, who is also a materials scientist, as the first science and technology advisor to the Prime Minister. And consequently, Ministry of Science and Technology and Ministry of Economic Trade Industry appointed top science to the science advisors as well. So currently, Dr. Hashimoto, actually he's my boss, and coordinates and build network among science and technology advisors domestically and also internationally, which plays very important role from perspective of science technology diplomacy in Japan. So now let me move to the scientific action thing and diplomacy for science and science for diplomacy. So going back to around 2008, discussions to promote science and diplomacy has been started at the center of science and technology policy in Japan, so at the policy layer. So, and the funding program called SATREPS has been developed. So this is very epoch-making funding program, combined STI and ODA, which means STI division and diplomatic division, to utilize science to solve global challenges in developing countries. Let me emphasize that the total 183 projects with 57 countries are finished or ongoing. So, and since 2012, the science and technology diplomacy has been added to the 5-year STI core plan of the government of Japan. So since then, various types of international scientific collaboration are promoted. So I will introduce recent two examples here. One is called Aspire to promote talent mobility in the field of emerging technologies. And the other is Nexus, which is motivated by a diplomatic occasion, the 50 years anniversary and friendship, 50 years anniversary of friendship and cooperation between Japan and ASEAN. So the Nexus aims to strengthen Japan and ASEAN scientific cooperation. So now think about the future of science and diplomacy. So the global situation has been drastically changing in these few years. So a lot of discussion are undertaken all over the world, including World Science Forum this time. And I will introduce the result of the symposium we held in Tokyo last March, inviting representatives from US, EU, and Thailand here. And we acknowledge that science is not only a soft power for diplomacy, but also could be a hard power under current geopolitical situation. And actionable science and technology diplomacy is required. So now, our research security is one of the common issues related to the science diplomacy. The current discussions are shown here, but I would like to emphasize that research security is never about restricting the freedom or openness of science, but today, it is very essential to promote international scientific collaboration, including action of science diplomacy. So while the research security rules are established by each country and differ from countries, so the related actions should be harmonized with international cooperation. So I believe this could be one of the important roles of science diplomacy from now on. So under such circumstances, the government of Japan has started the discussion on the next SDI basic plan, including science and technology diplomacy. So that will focus on expanding strategic collaboration with Indo-Pacific area, including ASEAN country and also Global South country in Africa. And also we are discussing how to deal with research security and integrity for global collaboration. So recently, new Prime Minister, Mr. Ishiba, emphasized the importance of science and technology diplomacy as well. So as a brief summary, I analyzed the strengths and weaknesses of Japan here. So as I mentioned, we have long history since 2008, and we have various implementation mechanisms, including funding programs. On the other hand, we need more talented human resources and more evidence-based approaches. So our coordination mechanism is unique, as I have introduced at the beginning, and we have found we have started science and advisory network, but it is still updating. And I learned situation in Asian country from this project and found that Korea, China, Philippines, Vietnam have advisory systems, and India and Malaysia have science advisor to the government. But I cannot find any Asian country who has science advisor to the foreign minister. So this is a uniqueness of Japan, I believe. So last but not least, let me briefly touch with the young and future leaders, so promoting future leaders. So for us and for them, so promoting international cooperation, interdisciplinary cooperation and developing diverse careers are so essential. So I will introduce the categories of human resource described by ISC, International Science Council here. So they describe three categories: knowledge generators, knowledge synthesizer, and knowledge brokers. So I believe the knowledge synthesizer and knowledge brokers are getting more and more important, and which we are aiming to be. And to lead the future science and diplomacy. So thank you for your kind attention.
Kana, thank you so much for such an outstandingly comprehensive concluding presentation. I would like to give the opportunity also to our audience to present any questions. If you would have a specific question to a specific country informant, please inform about your specific choice as well. Yes.
Good morning. I am Pierre Bruno Ruffini. I'm presently the co-chair of the European Union Science Diplomacy Alliance. First of all, I would like to congratulate you. This is an amazing amount of work that you are doing, gathering so much information about so many countries, and so I'm very impatient to learn more and to learn your report. Then I have two questions. The first, will you cover China? Will it be one of the countries of your list of countries? And my second question is about capacity building and more specifically about the training with two aspects. Did you get information from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that you could meet or talk with about the way they raise awareness about science and technology issues among career diplomats? And second, did you get information about the way they teach, they train, more specifically, science diplomats, science attaché, for instance? Any action on that question of training? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if I may jump in quickly, because today I am a moderator, but for this specific initiative, I am also a country informant for Latvia and Norway. So we have, in a sense, a bit of an overrepresentation of Europe here. A quick answer to your first question. Yes, indeed, we had a China report. Well, since today we don't have the exact country informant here, I will not go into great detail because of that individual contribution, but I'm sure that there will be some very interesting components in the forthcoming report from all of the countries, including from China. So I hope that you will treat this panel as a springboard and I hope that it has generated more interest into the forthcoming report and all the details that it will contain. And for the second question, I would also like to take the opportunity and quickly respond that from the country reports that were prepared, we have already a comprehensive understanding that indeed, on the national level, a lot of countries are investing a lot of efforts and in multiple ways, multilaterally and domestically, to build the capacity in specific niche areas of science and technology diplomacy. Because as you could hear today, we are covering a very vast range of topics. And so the approaches are not perfectly unified, but here again, I would like to say that this initiative has only started. Yeah? So the report is the first step towards more activities and more also training engagement. And now I would like to give the floor to my fellow country informants as well to give certain insights from their respective perspectives.
So in Japan, for the human talent development in Ministry of Foreign Affairs, actually the science advisor to the foreign minister is taking a very important role. So he held scientific seminar to diplomat also. And recently, we started new approach that we send scientists to their foreign embassies to how can I say, to work at scientists to make the environment that scientists and diplomats are working together. So this is an example of Japan.
And just a quick word to build up on this, I wanted also mention that I am a former trainee of the Asia-Europe Foundation facilitated diplomatic training course. And I was very excited about this experience and the general technical know-how that we had the experience to immerse in. However, there is room to also develop niche specializations. And I guess our presentations have shown that there is a vast opportunity to expand and build upon the existing successes and build more niche training opportunities for future aspiring professionals. Would there be any other questions, please?
Hi everyone, my name is Tiberius Ignat from SKS Knowledge Services in Munich, Germany. And thank you for the presentations. I'm very interested in the intersection between research security and science diplomacy, as our colleague mentioned in Japan is happening. So I'm following the hockey stick of, because it's a kind of a hockey stick of policies regarding research securities after 2022. Of course, we had some that are before, like in Japan in 2021, where is looking to internationalization of science, the openness of science as a, not a danger, but something, an area that is warning signals to us. But then we have in USA, in 2022, the NSPP 33, which is about enhancing research security. Europe 2024, we just released it. The only country that I noticed with an executive plan to implement these policies. It's not to have policies, it's a nice tableau, but there are policies, nothing more. So it's good to have implementation schemes. And I've been only able to identify in the United States with the Biden memorandum, White House memorandum for implementation of these policies, with a training manual, with a training course made available, with requirements, with everything. So the question is here, how do you see your countries or anyone in the room of implementing these policies? Otherwise, they are nice to admire, to contemplate, but we need to execute. And it's not about going against open access, it's about looking to science diplomacy and research security as complementary to the advantages that open science is bringing.
Thank you so much. Would any of the country informants like to respond and give some initial remarks? Then I guess I can also jump in on this question and confirm that indeed research security is a matter of considerable reflection on how to move forward. I detected this interest and this as a priority when I was preparing my country a report for Norway. So on certain country-specific contexts, this is a topic. However, it is not perhaps only a national consideration. There I can go back to Europe-wide considerations that are discussed among EU member states, where specific also stances have been agreed in official statements and documentation that research security will be a point of administrative consideration as well. So not just discussing in venues like these the conceptual implications of such a matter, but also moving on with a more hands-on approach in specific practical steps.
So in Japan, we have already, at the policy level, we have already a policy for research integrity thing. So now we are discussing, how to update and how to fit the changing situation at the moment. And as I mentioned in my presentation, now we are discussing the new STI policy, core policy, starting from 2026. And our discussions are so intensive to how to deal with, how to include research security in our STI policies. So, and also I would like to emphasize again that research security is not for restrict the global collaboration, but for promote global collaboration. You know that most of science should be open, could be open, but only very limited areas we have to close. So what we have to do is detect the areas which should be closed, and other wide range of science should be open and promote open science. So this is the concept of research security and open science. A kind of my personal view, but a kind of, now we are discussing in Japan.
Thank you so much. Would there be any other questions from the audience? It doesn't seem, oh, great, yes.
Sorry, to the very small question. Who is the author of this presentation on the wall there?
Well, yes, it's indeed a very inspiring drawing. We've had the pleasure of witnessing such drawings for several days in a row, I guess.
If you let me. Yeah, we welcome the offer there. Actually, Dorottya Budavári Nagy, she's a Hungarian talented artist who actually took part not just in this event, but also in another session in the afternoon. And she's a visual facilitator on the spot, and she creates these really nice visuals, not just for the World Science Forum in science diplomacy topics, but also a few accompanying events that happened later this week, or happened earlier this week.
Thank you so much. Would there be any other questions? Okay. Yes. My apologies. Please take the mic, otherwise it won't be audible.
I don't have a question. It's just an invitation for a side event in World Science Forum, which is tomorrow, and it's on research security. It's part of, it's called Focus on Open Science. It's a side event in World Science Forum tomorrow in the Academy House. So if anyone is interested in research security, could join there.
Thank you so much. And this is also a good opportunity to inform that individual country informants have also shown some of their first findings on other occasions. So we always enjoy having discussions together within the check-in session format and here in person. However, yes, exchanges among different initiatives about topics of mutual interest are of enduring importance. Thank you. Okay, then I will conclude perhaps asking you one more question. Is there any specific takeaway or a specific inspiring idea that you have come across over these past 4 months and you would like to share about this initiative? Perhaps a wish how it should be advanced in the future? Because this has been a truly participative initiative. We have contributed a lot of research, and so it's an opportunity to say the concluding remarks.
Well, for Belgium, I think with the current situation, the current global situation, for example, the ongoing war in Ukraine, I think if we really want, we can be fast in implementing some policies. We saw it with COVID. When there is a pressing need, we can make a political agreement and work towards a strategy. Now that we need urgent scientific and technological diplomacy, we can also do it. I think it's a positive note.
Thank you so much. And with that, I conclude the session. Thank you so much for your attention and patience.